that are going wrong and cardiovascular issues that your patient has. And we're going to talk about a few things. So of course you can put them in those three categories. It can be something with volume, structure, or electricity. Those are the three main buckets when we talk about things going wrong with the cardiovascular system. It's going to be one or more of those things happening with your patients. And the other thing, this is supposed to be my yellow brick road because I don't have a yellow marker, is that there's supposed to be bricks in a road. Everything pretty much when you talk about cardiovascular disease leads back to atherosclerosis. So if you understand why that happens and the things that happen to your patients, you'll end up seeing what the symptoms are, why they have those symptoms, and the things that happen with your patients. So that, the black thing up here is the vessel, that you're thinking about what's happening with your patient. So arterial system, venous system. The inside or innermost part of that is the intima. That's going to be the layer of endothelial cells that line those areas, and that whole thing that leads back to patients actually having cardiovascular disease, we look at as one of those independent risk factors, which you might have seen that on the quiz, is a C-reactive protein. That one is an independent variable when you see patients who are at risk for cardiovascular disease. And part of the reason why is now part of your routine screening whenever you go to the doctor. They're going to do a CBC, a chemistry panel, the lipid panel, and then they're going to actually do a C-reactive protein. If it's positive, the likelihood of someone having a cardiovascular event is greater. So it's considered a specific test for cardiovascular disease, so that's why we use it as far as screening goes. But the whole process of atherosclerosis is you have blood just going through your vessels, not having a problem, but as you get older and things happen, or how you eat and all those types of things, you end up developing fatty streaks on the inside. So that's what's happening. A lot of people think the hardening of the arteries happens on the outside, but it actually starts the process on the inside of the artery. So you have plaque formation that is happening. So you get a fatty streak is the first thing that happens. Over the years, as you eat more fat, that actually goes to the coronaries, because that's the bad part. LDLs, or that low down dirty lipoprotein, likes the coronaries. So that's where it goes. So you end up there, so the fatty streak gets larger and larger until the lumen of the vessel is decreased. And so then when you have activity associated with that, which is when you raise your heart rate kind of thing that's going on, or that ability to respond to that, which is like cardiac reserve kind of thing. When you're not able to do that, that's when the person's going to end up with pain. So that's part of what we're going to talk about today is stable angina kind of thing. Okay? But that's the process that's going on in your arteries all the time. When you autopsy teenagers, like if a teenager dies in a car accident, that kind of thing, you can already see the buildings of fatty streaks there. Especially in this country because of the way we eat. That's part of what ends up happening. So you see this process going on. Now the reason I put this wheel down there that's putting up dirt is because if you add these three things with it, those are what makes it happen faster. When a person is hypertensive, when their lipid levels are really high, and then you also have a person who smokes, that kind of makes this process happen 300-fold. So if you actually autopsy somebody who is 40 years old, who did all three of these things, was hypertensive, had hyperlipidemia, and smoked, their coronaries will look like somebody 80 years old. Because you're talking about the process speeding up because you do those things. And the issue that you have, especially why we always want people to talk about smoking, yeah, there's the cancer thing that we always think about. But the other part of that, especially when you talk about coronary artery disease kind of thing, is that it makes the platelets sticky. So you have platelet adhesion. It causes spasms in the arteries. So you think about what's going on. If I already have a mismatch between oxygen demand and supply, and now I have these other things going on, that puts me at risk for having a heart attack even more. So that's why you always want, one of the modifications you always want to talk to patients about, no matter what disease, but especially when talking about coronary artery disease, is smoking, because that's something that's going to make it worse. Also, part of what happens when you're smoking is that it raises your blood pressure. So it's like a vicious cycle kind of thing going on for patients. But that's the manifestation of things that's going on in your arterial system, which then puts all your organs at risk. Because remember, the vascular system doesn't communicate with the heart, communicates with all your other organs as well. But that's what we're looking for. The underlying process for most things that happen in the cardiovascular system has to do with that whole process of atherosclerosis. So this is going to be your thing for teaching for pretty much everybody in this country, but that's the kind of thing you look at. but especially as people get older, because coronary artery disease happens when people get older. Those are things that, it's a natural kind of progression thing, but not in a good way that we see. So what we're going to do for every patient is look at risk factors and those things that we can modify versus non-modifiable. And no matter how much you want to change certain things, it's still the same. We know that men have a higher incidence of coronary artery disease, so women have caught up. Unfortunately, we're almost even with guys in that happening. So as a person gets older, gender, ethnicities, those things kind of play into patients having coronary artery disease or the remnants of atherosclerosis. And part of that cultural thing is because it's also how you eat, or you see higher incidence of hypertension associated with African Americans and Latina cultures. It's just part of what we see. So those are things that are going to be risk factors or screenings kind of thing that we need to make sure we're doing early in life. So modifiable are those things you can change. So that would be, your sedentary lifestyle, the food that you eat, activity that you're doing, because those are things that actually you can take and say, hey, I can do things different. There are some people that say you can change stressors, because type A's are ones we consider most often to have heart attacks, but it's hard to change what you are, that kind of thing. Yeah, you may meditate, you're still freaking out all the time. So still you want to actually give people activities to try to lower their stress levels, because some of that you're going to have. Nursing students are like that.
I wonder why.
All right, because teaching will kill you. That's what it's happening, right? So modifiable things are those things you can change. So always think about when you're talking about test questions, there's always going to be some piece of teaching that goes with that. So whether you're teaching about diet, exercise, medications, those are things that are going to be in that category. The non-modifiable are those things you can't change. And even though we have people that want to change certain things, even if you had a gender reassignment surgery, your DNA is still male. So that's still going to put you at risk for certain things, vice versa for women as well. What you worry about is when you see male patients or family members who had cardiovascular events in their 40s, that puts all the guys at risk. When it's for women, it's in their 50s. So we have another, and part of that is because we have estrogen that protects us as far as some of this stuff goes. And it usually doesn't wane until you're like in your 50s. But if you see early cardiovascular events, that's how when you go and look at your family tree, you see all these people drop dead in their 30s and 40s, unfortunately. That's because, that's something that is a familial thing. Sometimes it can be familial issues with cholesterol. Because you have some people that do everything right and still have high cholesterol levels. So just know that there's family history you can't beat as much as you want to try. You really cannot. Gender, you cannot change. Okay. For diabetes, actually, is considered a modifiable. Hypertension is considered modifiable. So those are things you can change based on if you lose weight, because we know 10% of body weight is going to give us better glycemic control, better blood pressure control. So those are things that we can kind of modify with medications and or lifestyle changes. But those are things that will come into play with every disease process, and you'll know that when you read them in the book, they're exactly the same for everyone. Because cardiovascular risk is the same if it's for peripheral arterial disease, whether it's for coronary artery disease. You're going to see the same kind of things as far as your risk factors go. So don't think you got to learn another set of them. It's for the same disease process, essentially, because remember, all roads lead back to atherosclerosis. So that's how you have to think about that global thing that kind of goes along with that. So what we do or focus on when we're talking about all these disease processes, remember, we're going to treat the symptoms when the patient is in the hospital. But then the focus becomes, how do I keep you from ending up in the hospital? How do I improve your quality of life? How do I make sure that you're here a good long time? And all that goes with patient education. So it's going to be around diet, exercise, and activity, those things you can get people to do to change some of those risk factors. Also, they need to understand a lot about medication, when they take them, when they should call the doctor when something is not working right, or what kind of things do, if I see in myself, that I need to contact the doctor. Because if you let things go longer, then we end up thinking about, time is tissue when you're talking about the heart. So the longer you let it stress, it's going to end up being problematic later on in the process of what's going on. You also need to teach them about their follow-up and care. When are you coming to see me in the office, doctor's office? When are you going to see your doctor when certain things happen? Okay, when you're gaining weight, kind of thing. Women have this issue, you can't put the zip pants on a certain time of the month kind of thing. But when you're talking about a patient who has heart issues, You're talking about somebody who gains 2-3 pounds in a day. That's a whole nother process about what's going on with your patient. And you're looking for things happening. Because even before they're symptomatic, as far as a person having chest pain or a lot of fluid overload, you'll actually see that by doing a PNP on a patient, which lets you kind of know whether it's cardiac versus respiratory. When you have a person who's short of breath that comes into the ER and you don't actually know what's going on, that's the fastest way to figure it out. Because if it's a respiratory problem, what are they going to need? Just finish that test. So what do they really need is respiratory. And they're having shortness of breath. They need oxygen and what's the medication that's going to open airways? They need a bronchodilator. So if I got a person with heart failure, that's not going to help me because their issue is fluid. So that person actually needs LASIX. So if we do a BNP, it helps you figure it out. Okay, that's one of those things that you can do for a patient. You might have seen that like somewhere. All right. So those are things that we're going to look at as far as what's going on with our patient. Kind of think about what we're going to see. Think about the process that happens underlying all these conditions that your patient has. Is pretty much right here. That's the thing that you're going to see. So we have to talk about some things related to disease. And we have that little video to look at for heart failure. So if you remember that, because heart failure is a big, it's a core measure. So you see it in the hospital. You also see it if you're doing home health. That's one of those core measure things that you have to make sure your patients are being educated about their heart failure, how to prevent readmissions, because that, I mean, I've been a nurse for a long time. We never used to worry about when a patient came back to the hospital. Insurance just paid for it and whatever. Nowadays, if your person, people get readmitted, that insurance companies don't have to pay for them coming back to the hospital. And heart failure is a big, that's one of those things, if you're readmitted within 30 days, insurance company can deny payment to the hospital. So, or you can get penalized because you keep having so many people come back to the hospital. This is the first year that hospitals have been penalized for that. And somebody in our area had to pay close to $1 million because of it. Their fine was $740,000. So those are things that you never think about until it becomes, oh, I need to make sure I'm doing things with my patients. So the first thing we're going to talk about related to this process, everybody got the picture so I can erase them, is a patient who has stable angina. And coronary artery disease, these kind of go together. And you talk about the same process that's happening. That's how you have to look at it. They're not separate entities and things that are not happening in the patient. It's just that it's a different manifestation that you kind of see what's going on. So coronary artery disease is just that. We have this plaque formation that is now happening in the coronaries. And we know that one of the major risk factors associated with that, if we know age is there, ethnicity is there, but also cholesterol levels, especially your LDLs, low down there, your lipoprotein. Cholesterol, you want less than 200, but LDL, you want less than 100. There used to be a time we only treated diabetics to less than 100. Now we treat everybody because we know by research that says that LDL elevations are the ones that actually have more of an affinity for coronary arteries. Okay, so you want this one less than 200. You want your LDLs less than 100. You want triglycerides less than 4. And you want your HDL, or the happy one, greater than 35. And if you can get it greater than 60, it's considered a negative risk factor, meaning it takes one of your risk factors away because it's so good to your coronaries. Okay? That's the thing that you want it to do. The bad part about that is the only thing that gets it there is what? Exercise. That evil thing. All right? What? You got to get your heart rate in the target zone and keep it there for at least 30 minutes every day. That's the kind of stuff that actually helps this get better. But that's one of those things. So you want it greater than 35, but you really want it greater than 60. That's what everybody goes for now. But it's kind of hard to do unless you like to exercise. It's crazy. But it's the thing that you need to do in life. So that's one of the major risk factors you see associated with that. So this helps that fatty streak grow faster. Okay, because the platelets are going to come together. You're going to get adhesion going on there. The fat kind of builds this matrix. And so you're going to get that deposit going on in the coronary. So that's one of those things. Hypertension accelerates the process. So we want to make sure we control hypertension in patients. But this lipid thing is what we're going to see that tends to happen in people to develop that. So we don't want that going on in our patients. But what we see over time is that this plaque, this fatty streak is going to get bigger. So it's little there, but it's going to get bigger. And anytime you have a mismatch between oxygen demand and supply, meaning if you have activity, now I'm narrowing this artery, I don't have blood flow going through it, because remember, as it gets narrower and narrower, there's going to be less blood flow going through. So that's what produces pain in the patient. So anytime, and this is one of those things, you have to worry about stable angina, but you have to understand the process. The very first time a person is admitted with chest pain is called unstable angina. Okay, so first admission, I never had chest pain before in my life, it's going to be unstable angina. And the major reason is, think about it, being on a seesaw. I have a mismatch between oxygen supply and oxygen demand. If you think about it that way in a seesaw, you can think about why the person is symptomatic. It's decreasing blood flow through the artery, but remember, if I have activity, my heart rate increases, I need more blood flow. I don't have that because remember, the artery now is narrow. Not as much blood can go through. So think about it as a seesaw. If I increase activity, that means my supply is going to be low. If I can even it out, that's what you're trying to do. When you get that patient settled and resting, that's what you're trying to do. That part of it, blood flow is going to happen. That's why the patient doesn't have pain. But just the very first time a patient is admitted to the hospital, they're always admitted with unstable angina. They usually have this also written, they'll rule out MI. Because we don't know what's going on. So that's the very first time a patient presents to the hospital. You may see that written. Because I don't know when this happened, they never had it before, so the very first time they come in, that's why it's going to be written that way. But mainly it's a mismatch between oxygen demand and supply. That's the issue that I have. And part of the reason you think about what's happening in the patient and what you're going to see. So when they come in with this, you know, the first thing people do in the hospital, because that's, you know, all four things are right. Right, when you look at the question, I was like, oh, I should do all those things. Because you need an IV, yes. You need to put the patient on O2, yes. I need to do an EKG, yes. Okay, I need to give patient nitro, yes. Okay, all those things are going to be things I do for the patient. But what I want to do when this person comes in, I need to see what's happening. I can see them physically, but I need to see what the heart is doing. So EKG is important. So EKG is first, okay? Most of the time you think, oh, airway is the thing I have to do, but an EKG is going to give me a couple things about this patient. It's going to tell me what's going on with the heart. I can see whether you're having a heart attack or not, especially if I know when your onset of chest pain happened. And so that's going to guide treatment for the patient. Okay, so all those things are important, but when I'm talking about what is going to be my best thing to do for the patient, it's because it's going to give me diagnostic criteria and treatment stuff at the same time. Oxygen is going to help the patient, but it can't tell me what I need to do. See what I mean? All of them are important. You will realize that when you go to the ER, you're doing all this at once. Somebody's doing the IV, somebody's putting on O2, somebody's drawing blood. That's the way they do that. But when you're talking about test questions, think about what's going to give you the best picture about what's happening with my patient. So that's why EKG is important. Because I may see some changes there that indicate whether this is a person that's just having ischemia or a person who's having a heart attack. I know that sounds crazy, but the same thing, right? But there's other things that happen to the EKG when I'm talking about the patient having an acute MI. So I'm going to put an EKG on this person. And what I'm going to do is look at what's happening with the patient. And usually when you're talking about ischemia, that is associated with unstable angina, there's something that happens with your teeth. So when you're looking at your things going across the patient, you usually see T-wave inversion. So remember, we drew pictures up there. This is our P, Q, R, S, and T. So that's what you're looking at when you're looking at an EKG strip on a patient. The P wave is that first little round thing. That's telling you atrium. The QRS complex, or the which hat, as I'll tell you. But that's how you remember. QRS complex is that little thing that goes up, that's a triangle. That's ventricular stuff. Okay. So T wave is the refractory period when the heart is at rest and getting ready to beat again. So you look at the T wave to tell you about ischemia. So you usually see a T wave that's low. So you have a T wave that's below the baseline. You know how it looks like this imaginary line just drawn there? So you see a T wave that's lower than the baseline. Or you have a T wave inversion that can turn upside down. Instead of being a round bump, it's upside down. So ST depression or T wave inversion is what you see with ischemia. So those are the two things I see associated with ischemia. So ST depression, that segment is below the baseline, or I see a T wave inversion, so the T wave is turned upside down. So if I'm looking for where the ischemia is happening in the patient, those are the areas where I'm going to look. Okay? That's why when you have a patient who goes for a stress test, that's part of what they do, put you on an EKG to see if they're seeing the ischemia in your leads when you're doing activity. They're going to make you do the mismatch between oxygen demand and supply, see where in your heart is not being fed, and that's what they're going to tell you, hey, this is where your blockage is. So those are the two changes I'm going to look for when I'm talking about a patient who has ischemia. This is where I want to do intervention. I don't want to wait. Okay? Now the reason I told you it's different, if you're talking about a patient who has a heart attack, they also look at the ST segment. And you may have heard them talking about this when you're in the hospital or you get a report on a patient. You may have heard them talking about a patient who had a STEMI, okay, or a non-STEMI. That's in the MP4 class, but that's what they're talking about. What they look at is the ST segment. And when you have a patient who has tissue death, meaning necrosis that you see with acute MI, if they're within that window of time between 4 to 6 hours of presentation of chest pain, if you have ST elevation on the EKG strip, that's the person who can get thrombolytics. That's why EKG is important, because if I see that person started having chest pain an hour ago, that means I'm going to put you on thrombolytics, which MI is also a core measure. And that means that if I have a person who presents in the emergency room with chest pain, I'm supposed to have that patient from the ER in a cath lab within 90 minutes. There's no, if you take the patient later than that, it counts against you. So that's why part of what happens, or why you see that all these people come together when a person comes in with chest pain, is because if we can do that cath and we want to get them to the cath lab, we want to do it within 90 minutes. Otherwise, it counts against you. But what you see for necrosis is ST elevation. And it looks like this. When you see the person that has it,
Did you say ST elevation?
ST elevation.